Welcome back to the Xchange Place Podcast, y'all. Hey, y'all. Y'all know we've been in this dope series, Grief to Gratitude, and the men have been coming through. You hear me? And tonight is no different. We have somebody who is super duper special to me, and I'll share why in a little while. But we have Dr. Zeb joining us tonight. Hey, Dr. Zeb.
How are you doing, my friend? You doing okay?
I'm good. I am good. It's a lot going on, if I'm honest.
A lot
of blessings, a lot of elevation, expansion. But you know, when that comes, you know, it's the backside of the blessing. So
absolutely,
a lot of amazing things. But you are one of my coaches, and I'm honored to have you here tonight. You are actually one of the reasons that I'm doing this series this year.
Oh,
believe
nice.
it or not.
Nice.
So originally, when I started the podcast, it was always my intention in June to honor my dad. This year, with all that's been going on, I actually toggled with that a bit because I was like, is this the right time? Also, June is just a really hard month for me. So in our conversations and in just your mentorship and all your wisdom and everything that you've been pouring out to me and so many other people, you said something to me that really hit me. And I pondered over it. I journaled about it. I started thinking more about it. And that was replacing grief with gratitude.
Absolutely.
And I just want to tell you that this series has blessed me already. And I'm still recording episodes. It has given me a different lens about my dad no longer being here. And it's also made me really focus in on what I do have and who I do have.
Right.
So I am honoring people near and far, people I've known for a very long time, people I have not known very long. And you are one of those that I just recently met, even though I feel like I knew you my whole life.
Okay.
But I just honor you. I see you. You do amazing things that I can't even put into words what you're doing and how you're changing the trajectory of how people are thinking about relationships, interacting with one another. And you've been a blessing to me in the short period of time that I've known you. So I just want to thank you and tell you that I see you and that I am so excited to see what God has in store for you.
That really means a lot to me, and it was very uncomfortable. I think one of the worst things sometimes we can hear is our bios or people who really speak well of us, but it's really coming from a true place of humility. There's false humility, and there's a true sense of humility, and I really appreciate you, Miss Debórah, for your work and for giving me an opportunity to be a part of your journey. Gratitude is an incredible thing that I think we should all practice daily. And it's certainly something that I practice daily. It's something I've been practicing daily for just over 3 years, where, Monday through Friday, I can't think of a day where I have not either written something I'm grateful for or verbalized out loud something I'm grateful for. And gratitude is always something we can shift to from a dark place. So just honored to be here and really appreciate your work and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So we're about to talk. We are about to talk, sir. So the thing about this series, I really wanted to focus in on men, of course. My dad was one who, and we've had this conversation off camera, that I absolutely loved his journey because he was a good man, but he was not a perfect one. Mm-hmm. And I feel like right now the culture that we're in has this heavy weight, and not that men shouldn't have weight on them of they're leaders, right? They are the leaders of the household. They are the head, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a false, sometimes what gets put on men, a false level of what they need to have and what they need to be doing and that kind of thing, where men are kind of shrinking. And by shrinking, I mean like they're muted. They're not speaking up as much. We're not having crucial conversations to get understanding. And I just wanted some insight about kind of how you feel about where men and women stand kind of in the culture right now. And what do you feel like on the men's side, women can do better? And also what can men do that are muted or not speaking, who are maybe suffering in silence, or just not talking about the things that we need to talk about?
Yeah, that's an amazing question to get us started. I think we are definitely in a period of time where relationships are very toxic between men and women. And it's a very toxic culture in general. I pause a lot when I use the word toxic, because I think the word toxic, like trigger, manipulate. These words are sometimes used incorrectly. And the word toxic is one of those words. Toxic simply means poisonous. And I think relationships in general, culture has pitted men against women and women against men. And you see this dynamic now, especially not just in culture, but in the social media space, where either men, to your point, are not speaking up because their masculinity feels threatened, or maybe they don't feel as though they're qualified to speak. And then you have men that are speaking up and are just wrong and just loud. So the same can be said on the other side. A lot of men and women who are speaking in this space, but are not speaking from a healed place. I've tried to avoid this notion of assisting and coaching people and saying, this is the way, I'm right, you're wrong. The reality is, you could talk to 50 people, 50 coaches, 50 people in general, and get 50 different perspectives. But what makes good perspective good is when it comes from a healed place. Because the only way you counter toxicity is with something that heals it. Not to analogy you to death, but I was maybe 6 and accidentally drank some washing detergent liquid. My mom, old school, had some in a one of those red Solo cups, and the texture of it to a 6-year-old looked just like juice. And it was the way my mom and dad's old house, where our old house was, when the house that I grew up in, it was very, very small house. And the washroom was literally like a slide door. Well, you were in the dining room, the dining room and the kitchen were together. But the washroom was like this, behind this little slide door. And so it was convenient to wash clothes and just set things on the table. She set that on the table and I drank it. And didn't get a lot of it down, because obviously I don't remember how it tastes, but I don't imagine it was great. But I remember her happening to walk around the corner, and she said, "Zeb, what are you doing?" And I said, "No, I'm just drinking some juice, Mom." She said, "That's not juice." So she's grabbing me, she's shaking me, she's doing all this stuff and hit me on the back like that's gonna make the washing detergent come up, and it was swallowed by that time. And so she's freaking out. She dials, I think it was 911, I can't remember, and told them what happened. And they said, give him plenty of water and give him some milk, because water and milk will counter the poison that's in the detergent. And I think we have a responsibility today to try to be water and milk in a culture that is filled with a lot of toxic information, that continues to perpetuate these negative narratives between men and women who, frankly, need one another. So this good idea that men don't need women, women don't need men, is just at its baseline toxic. And unfortunately, you have a lot of unhealed coaches. You have a lot of hurt coaches. You have a lot of hurt therapists who need therapy, who are advising people from a hurt space. And all they're doing is pouring more washing detergent in the cup, and we're drinking it. And so it's a very toxic situation, in my humble opinion. And that's why you hear me talk so much. And I know you've heard it ad nauseum. You talk so much about those 5 areas of healing and why healing, and seeing life, not just dating, life in general, from a lens of being healed, creates a perspective that keeps you away from that jump and causes you to fly high above it so that you don't become poison like your peers. And so, yeah, it's a lot of that going on in the community and the culture. But I think we have to counter that by really pushing healing and wholeness more. And I think that might be a good counter to what we're dealing with.
I love that. I love I have to use that. I think I'm still the milk, being milk and water. I'm going to give you credit.
You're fine, my friend.
But I think I am going to, I love that analogy. I could actually picture that. Do you know what I mean? Because I think right now where we are, I feel like on the bigger platforms, a lot of times we see more of the people who are hurt behind the mics. Yes. We see more platforms that seems to be getting more attention than the milk and water of, the actual culture. And we really have to change that. Do you feel like women are pursuing wholeness more than men?
Yes. Hands down.
Why do you think that is, though?
There are more women in church than men.
Yeah.
There are more women in higher ed than men. Women have historically been dedicated to personal, professional, spiritual development and growth. The data tells us this more than men have been. And this is not just based on a particular culture, but can certainly be talked about from that perspective as well. And it's challenging and it's disheartening because on the one hand, you have a very loud section of men who want to lead and say, we should lead, hear me roar, we should lead. But they're attempting to do it from a place of brokenness, like you said, and not really investing in their own development and well-being. And yeah, most of my clients are overwhelmingly women. Not because I put a sign on my chest and say, hey, I only want to work with women, but women have historically been more invested in their overall well-being in the sense of healing, personal development, and growth. And it speaks to feminine energy, to be frank with you, because feminine energy receives and masculine energy gives. And so in order for a man to get help, he has to be humble enough to be quiet. And a lot of men, unfortunately, aren't humble enough to be quiet. Not all men. People, of course, take bites and just run with it. Not all men, obviously. Yeah. But the epitome of walking in masculinity is being able to utilize the feminine energy necessary to receive, because you have nothing literally to pour to anyone. Yeah. If you've never received, that's man, woman, whatever. And that's what you tend to see. Whereas feminine energy is open, it's receiving, it's taking in, it's absorbing. So quite naturally, they have a higher proclivity to want to be attached to knowledge and information because that's in alignment with their nature. Now, women have to be careful because when a woman is out of her femininity and masculine, then she becomes hard like a man and difficult to talk to, which is why when a woman is not operating in her femininity and operating more her masculinity, and she then meets or encounters a man who is masculine, they bump heads because both of them want to give and nobody wants to receive. So we have to be very mindful of how energy works. And I know that challenges the modern woman in many ways. I've got a funny video I'm going to post Thursday. I can't wait. It's going to make a lot of women upset because I, in essence, had to tell a client to shut up. And the funny part about this video is that, she took it well, but the reason I could see clearly through my engagement with her why she was having relationship problems. She wouldn't listen to me.
Yeah.
And she paid me to listen to me. And so we just all have to understand that personal development, my friend, is connected to receiving. And before I started doing these videos, before I started doing all of this stuff in coaching, I spent a considerable amount of time being poured into and going on my own journey. Because if you don't receive, you can't be a giver on any scale. You can't give money to anybody if you haven't first what? Received. We talk about it's more blessed to give than to receive. We say that out loud, but the reality is it's more critical to receive than it is to give.
You are all in my business. And
it's more blessed. Yes, blessing comes in giving, but it's more critical that you receive, or else you have nothing to give. And the same applies in our personal development as well.
Yeah. So with the men who have a problem with listening, receiving, like, how do we change that? You know what I mean? Like, what do we do? What can we do? Not what do we do, but what can we do? Where do we start? I know there's such a huge, I feel like it's a huge gap. When we talked about church, of course, there's always going to be more women in church. And so where do you feel like is a good place to start with men and getting men more comfortable with talking or listening? Or is it a trust factor? I've had someone say to me that, a man really has to trust another man to follow them, to listen to them, to, you know what I mean? Like, even in a church setting, to be able to serve another man, they really have to have a level of trust. So, like, where do we start with that, especially with the next generations that are coming? Like, where would you suggest that we start?
I'm writing down 3 words because I don't want to forget this, and I think this is a really good question. When a man goes to college, does he have to trust a professor he never met to listen to them? No. Typically, that man walks in a room. The professor has the credentials. He is assigned to lead that class. And men and women come in under the assumption that that person's qualified to instruct. For some reason, church then becomes one of those spaces where you hear the narrative sometimes from men. Well, I would listen more if I trusted the preacher, or if I trusted, the setting, or I trusted whatever. And the fact of the matter is, trust is not just given; it's earned. And trust is a mutual exchange of understanding. It's a mutual exchange of understanding. I think there are 3 areas every man has to really look in the mirror and think about. First area is humility. Because the reality is, it takes humility to open up yourself to someone that you know or don't know to be able to receive from them, right? It takes humility. Trust is cool, but it takes humility, right? And it is going into the situation with the understanding that I may know some things, but there's probably a lot I don't know. And my willingness to be open to what I don't know can create the opportunity to empower what I do know. It requires humility. Second thing that I would say that it requires is understanding respect for authority. Now, I'm getting in trouble saying this, but I find it odd that most of us men expect women, our children, to see us as symbols of authority, but don't understand a very simple principle that when it comes to authority, everybody has to answer to somebody. And for some reason, in the relationship space, in the development space, in the church space, in spiritual space, synagogues, whatever, those tend to be places where we sometimes come across as the final authority. fact, I was browsing my comments today from a video that I posted, and some guy, from an old video that I did, I think was about the authority and not submitting, women not submitting. It was one of the first videos that kind of went a little crazy. And the guy says in the comments, man, I was following you along. You were doing well, but you missed me with the whole higher authority thing. We are the authority. And I laughed because even a cop has to report to a governing board. And a governing board has to report to a state agency. And a state agency has to report to a federal agency. And then a federal agency has to report to Congress. Meaning everybody has somebody that they have to operate in authority in. And it requires humility to accept that. And I think sometimes as men, we struggle with that. For some reason, we have been graced with this idea that we are the authority. And you're not. Even a coach needs a coach. Even a mentor needs a mentor. I had them. My therapist kicked me out 2 years ago. Told me she didn't want to see me anymore after about 4 or 5 sessions. She said, Dr. Zeb, I need you to apply this stuff to your life. You know this stuff anyway, and I need you to go out and teach people. And that's actually how TikTok and those things started. A wonderful lady who's now about 79 years old, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and just a riot. I was humble enough to listen to her. And we have to be humble enough to honor authority. I think the third thing that we have to get over, my friend, and really not get over, yes, get over and work through is the spirit of offense. We are, unfortunately, in a climate where everybody is easily offended. And unfortunately, it is hard to have conversations with people that are holistic, that are academic, that are controversial, that are tough, without becoming personal, without becoming offensive. And men have to be the first examples of this, because we can't be quick to take everything that is shared with us, that is shared about us, so personal. I did a recent podcast, and the ladies were talking about church hurt, and that whole topic came up, and brought up a very poignant point that deals with offense that I want to mention quickly. And it is, offense is a choice. Offense is not objective. Offense is not a gift. Offense is not mandatory or required. Offense is a choice. And the greatest part of that choice is then our reaction to offense. Like, once we decide we're going to be offended, then what's our response? And to expect a man to go into church or synagogue and buy into everything the preacher's saying, especially if he's not a believer, whatever, he never goes to church and he's trying to develop himself spiritually, he may go in and he may hear some things that he doesn't agree with. But it is very possible to not agree with someone and not be offended in the process. And what tends to happen with men and women, especially with men, which is why you see the shortages in counseling and coaching, you see the shortages in churches and synagogues, is because men oftentimes, if they don't have a real desire, the humility to respect an authoritative voice, then oftentimes they're offended by something they simply just disagree with. And disagreement and offense are not the same. So I think men have to work in those 3 areas: humility, authority, offense. We just can't take everything so personal, but that requires growth, healing. You've got to be mentally and emotionally balanced. I was a former athlete. My father was the toughest coach I ever had in my life. 7th and 8th grade basketball coach, 9th grade, 9th through 12th grade track coach, AAU basketball coach, ages 11 through 18. Just cold blooded. I would come home crying many days from practice. It was torture. best thing that could have happened to me, because it taught me how to work through correction and offense. And a lot of our men struggle with that, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think women can do for not only their mates, but even the men in their lives, the men that they're raising? I know there are a lot of single moms, raising, well, I'm going to say boys because they're literally young men and one is a grown man.
You got grown, right?
I got a grown one. But like, what do you think to help along that process? I mean, I know people have to be ready for themselves. Right. I do understand that. Sure. But even in the space of just being supportive, to them doing more self-development, to them actually investing more in themselves and examining and getting more self-aware, like what do you think the woman's role is in that?
I think supportive is good. Is that right? I think supportive is a good place to be. But I would just say supportive in a very balanced way, because they're supportive, i.e. Jody's mama and baby boy. And then they're supportive in, what's the movie? Big Mama, she ends up with diabetes. She dies, Nia Long.
Oh, Soul Food.
Soul Food. There's Big Mama supportive, where Big Mama loves you, but Big Mama, the grandmother in that movie who passes away, loves you enough also to tell you the truth. And what we tend to see in society are the two spectrums. You have Jody's mama, which loves her son so much that she feeds into his brokenness.
Yeah.
And then you have Big Mama, who loves her family, but can literally put her hands on you and pull you out of something and tell you this ain't how it's done.
Yeah.
And so that's what Big Mama is, in my opinion, a great example of what balanced support is. Balanced support. It is designed to give you what you need. And sometimes what we need is not what we always want. And I think that's what moms can do. And it requires, frankly, the willingness to be a mama first and everything second. I get in trouble when I talk a lot about parenting nowadays.
Why?
And I think these young parents, honestly, I have clients, I've had to challenge in this space to say to them that maybe the friction you're having between you and your child, who is now an adult in their 20s, and here you are in your 40s. So you had them young, but maybe the friction you're having is because you spent so much time being their friend and not enough time being their parent.
That's good.
I know people who are grandmothers who go to clubs with their children. These things create challenging scenarios to work through when it comes to trying to offer the kind of support and voice that a child needs from his mom or his dad. And so I think moms can offer balanced support. Yes, and especially when it comes to your boys. The mother-son dynamic is always interesting versus the mother-daughter dynamic. But moms tend to really coddle their sons and really want to make sure their sons are prepared. And Lord knows if you have to raise them as a single mom, you coddle more. You want to grab and embrace them more, because it's really not out of a babying as much as it is protecting, right? You understand the challenges a young man has to face, but you still you got to give them that balance, right? You got to know that you've done your part. And when they get to that age, when they're ready to move on and live on their own and do the things that they do, trust that you can then shift from a manager to a coach, a manager to a consultant to your children. And so I think that's what moms can certainly do with their children, and especially sons.
Yeah. I had the opposite problem, if I'm honest. I was a hard mom. I had to go back and apologize. I was the masculine portion for the boys.
In what way? Why do you say you were hard though? In what way? You were hard in what way?
So I had a very, in my head, first of all, I grew up a tomboy, so I had a very, I feel like a masculine approach with raising them. Especially my oldest son. I was super hard on him because in my head, I was like, if I can get him right, I know this sounds crazy, but that my younger son would follow.
I know exactly what he went through.
Yeah. So it was a very strict, strategic thing with him. And also I feel like because their dad had the I'm your homeboy, I didn't feel like there was room for me to be soft on them at all. So the majority of their life until I really start doing like self-development and really like working through my own stuff, was I able to like kind of let the reins open a little bit more. But I was always the bad parent in the sense of like good guy, bad guy. I mean, I didn't care because I was like, we'll be cool later on, but this is not that. I'm not your friend. We'll be friendly later. And, what I'm teaching you and what I'm instilling in you, you will understand later.
Absolutely.
That didn't always feel good. And, when they were younger. And I know now they 100% understand because now they have a different lens that they're looking through. And they're grateful. But I had the opposite. I was definitely not the coddled parent. I'm the one that's like, do not tell my mother nothing. Lord have mercy.
Yeah. And I think if you're going to be on an extreme, I would far rather a parent be on that extreme than the too friendly extreme.
Yeah.
Because the reality is on the too friendly extreme, you're less likely to have respect and you're more likely to have respect on the extreme end. Now, somebody's going to say, well, no, it's not really respect. It's fear. Where fear, when it's healthy, is respect. I won't, deal with that, but it is. Fear that is healthy is respect. If it's healthy. And so I would call that healthy fear, in that you were really raising them as an oldest child and a son. I know what that's like. You're the first time around. They want to get it right, and you have to cross every I and dot every T. Or dot every I and cross every T.
I know what you mean.
Right, totally do that. But I think also, and the reason I asked you that is because, of course, I would want you to be overly hard on yourself. I think even in that, children know when you care. And that's the more important thing, in my opinion. They know when you're tough and you care, and they know when you're not real tough. And at their young age, they perceive that as caring, but it's not until life hits them that they recognize mama didn't do enough. Daddy didn't do enough. And that's harder to correct than mama really went hard to make sure we were doing what we were supposed to do.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. I wouldn't change it for the world, though. I feel like it developed them in a different way, both of them.
Yes.
And I see it in, my son just turned 21. I see it in the way that he just lives his life. And he is not a perfect child, but to be 21, the level of wisdom, the level of sometimes hearing his perspective of what he's thinking, even my 16-year-old, I'm amazed. I'm like, I did not have that. I wasn't equipped with those tools.
I love it.
I wasn't even thinking that at that age. I was just kind of out here living life. So I love that about them. I do love, though, that when I got to a point where I felt like, okay, you can kind of lighten up a little bit, that it's opened up a different perspective of our relationship so that we can have conversations that they would have never had with me back then at all.
Absolutely.
So I do love that part too. So I think it's a benefit. I mean, I definitely, my oldest son will probably say, for most of his life, they were scared of their mama.
Listen, I understand. Listen, he had it hard for sure. I can empathize with him for sure.
He had it definitely hard. So like I want to circle back to this whole relationship gap. Let me just say that. And I guess I want to know, for men, like, what advice for a man who wants to seek help, right?
Mhm.
But is concerned about maybe what people are going to say or don't know where to go. Like, where do people start, or how did you start? Because I know you had to get to a point. You talked about your therapist,
Yeah.
but what got you to the point? Where were you at the point that you said, you know what, I'm finding a therapist. I'm finding, where were you? Where do you feel like people have to be to seek that?
No, I think it's a great question. I hate going to the doctor. And I hate going to ER. I hate it with a passion. But like a lot of people who hate going to the doctor, eventually you have to go when the pain's too much. And that's when I started therapy, right? When I was really in a period of my life dealing with some major life transitions and transitions in my family. And it was a lot to manage. And for the first time in my life, the person who had always been the person that was coaching others needed a coach desperately. And the pain was too much for me to figure it out on my own. Mm. And that tends to, Miss Deborah, be the thing that drives people to help. When they're trying all of these home remedies, you're YouTubing it up, you're doing all of this stuff, trying to self-correct, not realizing there are only certain medications you can get when you go see a doctor, right? Or when you go to a place that can help you. And so I think pain was the impetus for me, and I see that being the same impetus for a lot of men. That said, typically, once you get to a place of pain where you want to get help, typically we don't put up a Facebook status that says, I'm going to the doctor. Now, a lot of people do that. You know, they do it and they post from their hospital bed and they got the IVs running and they have the phone in one hand and they're like, pray for me. And I'm not going to be petty about what I really think about that. But most people, when they're going to get help, don't make announcements. They get in their car, they privately go and get the help that they need. And therapy and coaching is no different. It's no different. Men need to find a therapist, a coach that they feel like can be empathetic enough to hear them, but objective enough to correct them. And take the first step. And the first step, second step. First step is admitting that you got some pain you need to resolve. Second step is having the courage to reach out, the humility, and say, listen, I don't know you, but sir, ma'am, whoever because men may prefer a female or a woman therapist coach. That's fine. But you still have to have the courage to reach out and say, I need some help. And again, that goes back to the humility conversation. This is typically where men stop. Most men are honest enough to say, yeah, I'm not perfect. I got flaws like anybody else. They check off box one easily. Box two requires you to take that admission and be humble enough to reach out and say, help me. And that requires humility. That requires the ability to open yourself up, and men struggle in that space, but it can be done. It is one of the most beautiful things. I get a lot of messages every day. And one of the most beautiful things that I'll see in my messages or emails is from a man. I've got a man that is much older than me. He might be old enough to be he's old enough to be my dad easily. And, he reached to this kid, saying, hey, doctor, I enjoy your videos. I realize in my life, I really need some help and guidance. And I'm coming to you to ask you if you're willing to help me. Those messages melt my heart, especially coming from an older man who not only has to be humble enough to admit he needs help, but you're displaying a different level of humility by going to a younger man to say, hey, can you engage with me? And so I think we have to have humility in that space. And people who enjoy doing this work like you have, your purpose and mission and what you do in podcast, people who genuinely enjoy what they do are not looking for a reason to minimize someone because they need help. Typically, now there are some buttholes out here, make no mistake about it, but typically people aren't looking for a reason to minimize people who need help or need their assistance. And so I just want to encourage men that are watching this, or women that have husbands, boyfriends, sons who need help, to encourage them to move beyond admission to making a step, right? You just make the step, reach out to someone that maybe you resonate with. We've got the beauty of social media now, TikTok. Anybody who's doing any type of work in this space probably can be found between the internet and one of the social media sites. Watch their videos, get a sense of their personality and spirit and their approach, and find somebody that you resonate with and shoot them a DM, reach out to them. If they got a big following, it may take them a while to see it. They may not even see it at all. But have the courage to make that first step. And I'm telling you, if you sincerely mean it, you'll link up with a person who can then bring you through the other steps, realization, and all of these other steps to help you a better person. So that's totally what I would say. We got to be honest with them. We're going to have the courage to make the step.
Yeah. You know what, as you were talking, what I was thinking, it would be so cool. So Dr. Zeb does this thing called group work.
Yeah.
And it's a small group of people. I think you take 12 people. And it's done, I think, twice a month.
Yep.
And people come on and they're able to ask him questions. And there is not only Dr. Zeb giving his amazing insight, but also the group kind of, leaning in and sharing their experiences. I would love to see you do some sessions like that for only men.
Yeah.
I have some people that I literally will pay for them to come. And I don't say that in I just think it's a great space. I think it's such a healing space. It is community. It is understanding that, hey, I'm not alone. There are other people struggling in these same areas, or maybe having difficulty and challenges in these areas. And it is a safe but vulnerable place. I would love to see that. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget that. I think that's a great idea. And, I've had a few men reach out about group work and say, Doc, I don't know if I'm ready to talk in front of other people, that kind of thing. Which I get it. It requires an element of courage as well. But men tend to your point, tend to become a lot more comfortable among men than they are among a mixed crowd or a crowd that involves women, and tend to be more their true selves. And so I definitely will. I'll take this idea to heart. This is what you
do some barbershop talk.
Yeah,
but about healing.
Right. Maybe late July or maybe August. Do something.
Yeah. When you decide, please let me know, because there are a couple of men that I have in mind, young and old, that I just think would benefit. And I'm always, every day, I have this thing that I do in my journal, who I bless today. So I would love to sow seed into what you're doing, but also into these men that I have in mind, into their lives. I think they would benefit. And I want to see men have a space like that that's safe. And I feel like you're amazing at just kind of helping people, even though you don't know that you're getting them to talk, but getting people to talk a little bit more and ask questions, and also share in the asking questions. So I think you're a great moderator in the group work. We had one, I just attended one Saturday, and it was amazing.
It was. You so good. Really appreciated you participating and your input in that session. But yeah, I'll take that idea to heart. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So you got to tell the people where they can find you, what's up next for you, your YouTube, all that good stuff. We know he's about to be a podcaster.
No. I'm just trying to figure it out, my friend. I'm going to have to book a session with you to figure this stuff out.
Come on. We can listen.
It's been
I'm running a class right now, and it's so good. Yeah.
I'm proud of the work that you're doing in this space, because I think it speaks to your professionalism and how you really encourage people to try to execute these types of things in as much of a professional way as possible. You've even been very helpful with me in sharing things that I do, and I really will say that to you personally. I really appreciate how you've done that. So working on the podcast, but I'm on all networks except for Twitter. I'm not heavy on Twitter, and I can't get into Twitter. I don't have a lot to say, in small characters, and think you have to kind of do Twitter regularly, and I barely have time to do what I do. But Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, now YouTube, at Zeb III, and still doing a lot of coaching, doing it on a limited basis for now. I've been backed up, booked with clients for some time, and looking at some ways to open up the books to be a little bit more available for people that are interested in that work. TikTok on Thursday nights. Every Thursday we go live on TikTok and talk about different topics. This Thursday is going to be a riot. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's Thursdays at 9:08, and then on Mondays, we did not Monday, but starting next Monday, we're going to continue what we started last Friday on YouTube, called The First Step. Ironically, we're talking about the first step tonight. Mm-hmm. Giving people an opportunity to come on screen and work through their problems publicly. And so quite a few things going on, finishing up book number 4. Hope to have that done, hopefully in a couple of weeks. Yeah. And just trying to keep my head above water like everybody else. Okay. That's about it, my friend. But I really appreciate this platform, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and share with your viewers in this session that I think is very powerful for me. And really appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And many, many more. I next year, and I'm praying about this, but I really want to do this in person. I want to do a live one. I would love to have a male panel. Mm-hmm. And I would love to have an all-female audience where mm-hmm. women come to listen to men and men come to share, and we bridge the gap. I pray that we have the opportunity to bridge the gap, and then we can switch it and do the women on stage and men in the audience. Because I do think it's a lot of, we're talking at one another, but I don't think that people are really listening and Absolutely. Listening to understand one another. I think that the greatest thing that I learned in my journey with my dad was not that it excused some of his behavior that I didn't like, mm-hmm. but I got understanding of the why behind a lot of things that he did. And he had the opportunity to change his behavior, and he did.
Wow.
And I love that, because that always gives me hope that not just men, but people in general have the ability to change. They have to want it, and Absolutely. They have to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And kudos to you for taking his memory and what he has meant to you, and really turning it into an opportunity for people to be empowered. And that's what it's all about. And so in this space, you're doing incredibly well, and we're definitely sure.
Thank you. Yes, so we'll see you really, really soon. Sooner. This is my coach, y'all. So I'm definitely going to see you. Really soon. I'll see you in July once I get settled. This is I have 2 more days in Jersey, and then I'm on a plane to Georgia. So
and congrats to you for that relocation. And you're going to do well. You're doing a great job just managing everything you got going on, and also with the children. And so, kudos to you for being an example to us busy folks of how to get it done. So
yes, balance. We're working on that with Dr. Zeb.
I'm working on it myself. We're in the same boat, my
friend. Balance. We're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're giving ourselves grace. But till next time, we will see you next week. See y'all later.